Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Ready or Not in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is called Ready or Not. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it. All the interesting about this movie in today's video I am going to tell you. I am also going to give you all the information on which I request you friends to watch this video till the ends. So let's start the video. Ready or Not is a 2019 American dark comedy action horror film directed by Matt Bettinelli, Alpine and Tyler Gillett, and written by Guy Busick and R. Christopher Murphy. It stars Samara Weaving, Adam Brody, Mark O'Brien, Elise Levesque, Nikki Guadagni, Henry Czerny, and Andy McDowell. It follows a young bride who is hunted by her spouse's wealthy family as part of a wedding night ritual to worship the devil. Preparations began in November 2017 when Bettinelli, Alpine, and Gillett, members of the filmmaking collective Radio Silence, were hired as directors, with Busick and Murphy attached to write the screenplay. After setting an initial release date, casting occurred from August to October 2018. Principal photography began later that month and concluded in November, in locations in and around Toronto, Canada, and the surrounding Ontario area. Brian Tyler was hired to compose and conduct the film's score, marking his first collaboration with Bettinelli, Alpine, and Gillett. Ready or Not premiered at the Fantasia International Film Festival on July 27, 2019, and was theatrically released in the United States on August 21, 2019, by Fox Searchlight Pictures. It received positive reviews from critics and grossed $57.6 million worldwide against a $6 million budget. It was nominated for Best Horror Film at the 46th Saturn Awards. Plot. As a child, Daniel Ladomas is confronted in his family's mansion by Charles, a wounded man who begs him for help. Instead, Daniel alerts his family, who arrive in ceremonial masks and robes. Despite his bride Helene's pleas, Charles is shot with a spear gun and dragged away into a locked room. 30 years later, Daniel's brother Alex, the estranged son of the owners of the successful Ladomas Family Games Company, is set to marry Grace, a former foster child. On Alex and Grace's wedding day, she meets the Ladomases, Daniel and his wife Charity, Alex's cocaine-addicted sister Emily, her husband Fitch, and their young sons Georgie and Gabe, Alex's aunt Helene, and his parents Tony and Becky. After the ceremony, Tony explains that his ancestor Victor Ladomas made a deal with someone named Labail to build the Ladomas fortune in exchange for the family observing a tradition. At midnight on their wedding day, every new member draws a game card from Labail's puzzle box. Grace draws Hide and Seek. Believing it to be a harmless game, Grace goes to hide herself as the Ladomases each receive a weapon. Alex finds Grace, who witnesses Emily accidentally kill a maid whom she mistakes for Grace. Alex reveals that his family is cursed. If the new member draws the hide-and-seek card, the rest of the family has to find and ritually sacrifice them before dawn, or they die instead. The game was last played by Helene's husband, Charles. With the mansion locked down, Alex disables the security system to allow Grace to escape. She is discovered by Daniel, who is disillusioned with his family and gives her a head start before alerting the others. In the chaos, Emily accidentally kills another maid. Grace's escape is blocked by the family butler, Stevens. She, in turn, splatters the hot tea he was preparing on his face and runs away. Alex is restrained by Daniel and Tony after he attacks the latter. Grace is seen by a third maid who accidentally crushes herself in a dumbwaiter while yelling for the family. Grace runs to the goat shed, where Georgie shoots her in the hand. She knocks him out, but is startled by a goat and falls into a pit filled with the corpses of the Ladomas' previous sacrifices, including that of Charles. She escapes and makes it through the front gate. Grace is pursued into the forest by Stevens. She fights Stevens off, but is eventually captured by him. As he is driving Grace back to the house, she awakens and attacks Stevens, causing the car to crash and kill him. Daniel, nearby the crash, captures Grace after realizing that his father is secretly watching. The Ladomases prepare to complete the ritual sacrifice, however they are incapacitated after Daniel poisoned them with a non-lethal dose of hydrochloric acid in the ritual cup. Charity shoots Daniel in the neck after he attempts to protect Grace, leaving him to bleed to death as Grace runs away. In the ongoing chaos, the mansion is set on fire, and Grace is attacked by Becky, whom she beats to death with LaBelle's box. Alex escapes his restraints and goes to find Grace, but witnesses her attacking his mother. Grace pulls away from Alex, who, after realizing that she will never trust him and will almost certainly leave him once she escapes, subdues her to complete the ritual. Grace breaks free from the ritual table just as the sun rises. Despite Grace having won the game, Helene attempts to attack her anyway, but explodes mid-stride, a consequence of the curse. The rest of the family explode one by one, leaving only Alex, who tries to convince Grace to forgive him. She refuses and tosses her ring back, declaring she wants a divorce. Alex then succumbs to the curse and explodes. LaBelle briefly shows himself to Grace and nods in approval. The sole survivor of the night, Grace walks out of the burning manor just as the police arrive. Upon asking her what happened, she simply replies, "In-laws." Cast: Samara Weaving as Grace, Alex's naive and unassuming young bride and wife Adam Brody as Daniel Ladomas, Alex and Emily's alcoholic brother, Etienne Kellysi as young Daniel Ladomas, Mark O'Brien as Alex Ladomas, Grace's conflicted husband, Daniel and Emily's brother Chase Churchill as young Alex Ladomas, Henry Cherney as Tony Ladomas, owner of the Ladomas Gaming Dominion and patriarch of the Ladomas family, Andy McDowell as Becky Ladomas, Daniel, Emily and Alex's family-oriented mother Kate Ziegler as young Becky Ladomas, Melanie Scrofano as Emily Ladomas, Daniel and Alex's cocaine-addicted sister Christian Brune as Fitch Bradley, Emily's clueless husband, Georgie and Gabe's father Elise Levesque as Charity Ladomas, Daniel's snobbish wife, who presumably has a lower-class background similar to Grace, Nikki Guadagni as Helene Ladomas, Daniel, Emily and Alex's eerie aunt Ilana Dunkelman as young Helene Ladomas, John Ralston as Stevens, the Ladomas' loyal family butler, Liam MacDonald as Georgie Bradley, Fitch's and Emily's son, Ethan Tavares as Gabe Bradley, Fitch's and Emily's son, Hanukkah Talbot as Clara, the apparent favorite maid who is the shot in the face by Emily Celine Tsai as Tina, a maid who was accidentally shot in the mouth by Emily with a crossbow and was promptly killed with an axe by Helene. Daniela Barbosa as Dora, a maid who was hired because Tony liked the way she danced, crushed by the dumbwaiter Andrew Anthony as Charles, Helene's late husband, briefly Daniel, Emily and Alex's uncle Nat Faxon as the voice of Justin, employee of the car onboard assistance company Guy Bissick, and R. Christopher Murphy, the film's writers, as the How to Use a Crossbow instructors, uncredited, James Vanderbilt, the film's producer, as LaBelle, uncredited, an anagram of the name Belial, a word used in the Hebrew Bible to characterize wicked or worthless, which has become personified as devil. Production development. In November 2017, it was announced that Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette would direct the film, from a screenplay by Guy Bissick and R. Christopher Murphy. Ready or Not was produced by Trip Vinson, James Vanderbilt, William Sherrock, and Bradley J. Fisher. Tara Farney, Tracy Nyberg, and Chad Villella executive produced it, under their Mythology Entertainment and Vinson Films production banners, respectively. From August to October 2018, Samara Weaving, Andy McDowell, Adam Brody, Mark O'Brien, Melanie Scrofano, Henry Cherney, and Elise Levesque were cast. Filming principal photography was from October 15, 2018 to November 19, 2018 at locations in the Toronto area, including Casa Loma, Sunnybrook Park, the Clairville Conservation Area, and the Parkwood Estate in Oshawa, Ontario. Release. The film had its world premiere at the Fantasia International Film Festival on July 27, 2019, and was theatrically released in the United States on August 21, 2019, 9. Ready or Not was released on digital HD on November 26, 2019, and on DVD and Blu-ray on December 3. The release includes a 42-minute making-of documentary, an audio commentary with star Samara Weaving, directors Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette, and executive producer Chad Villella, as well as a photo gallery and a gag reel. Box office Ready or Not grossed $28,731 in the United States and Canada and $28,901.46 in other territories for a worldwide total of $57,650,777. In the United States and Canada, the film was projected to gross around $6.5 million in its opening weekend and $8 to $12 million over its 5-day opening frame. Playing at 2,818 theaters, it was the widest release in Fox Searchlight's history. 12/3. It made $1.9 million on its first day, Wednesday, including $730,000 from Tuesday night previews, and $1.1 million on its second. The film went on to debut to $8 million during its opening weekend, and $11 million over its first 5 days, finishing second on its first 2 days and sixth for the weekend. It fell just 26% in its second weekend to $5.9 million, finishing fifth. Critical response. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 89% of 323 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 7.2/10. The website's consensus reads, "Smart, subversive, and darkly funny, Ready or Not is a crowd-pleasing horror film with giddily entertaining bite." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 64 out of 100 based on 39 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ to F scale, while those at PostTrack gave it an overall positive score of 71%, including an average 3.5 out of 5 stars and a 50% definite recommend. Peter DeBruge wrote in Variety that this deliciously diabolical sophomore feature, which hails from the resourceful low-budget trio known as Radio Silence, represents a departure for indie distributor Fox Searchlight, which has a real winner on its hands, that rare get-out-like horror movie capable of delivering superficial diversion alongside deep cultural critique. Peter Travers of Rolling Stone called the film a decadent blast to watch, a comic takedown of the rich done with the rude energy of a horror thriller and the courage of its own manic anti-marriage convictions. Writing for IndieWire, David Ehrlich describes the film as wickedly entertaining from start to finish, and painted with enough fresh personality to resolve into something more than the sum of its parts. Leah Greenblatt wrote in Entertainment Weekly, "Come for the crossbows, etc., and to watch Weaving's star be born in real time. Stay for the socio-economic lessons and sweet, sweet revenge." David Sims of The Atlantic wrote, "The real fun in Ready or Not comes from the ways it subverts its time-tested story, balancing wry commentary and straightforward horror in its portrait of fumbling arrogance and curdled privilege." Bobby Lapire rated the film 10 tens and wrote in Film Threat that the acting is incredible. The directing striking and intense, and the screenplay is unbelievably brilliant and funny. I adore every scary and funny second of this movie, and highly recommend it to everyone else. On August 10th, Universal Pictures canceled the release of the Blumhouse production The Hunt, directed by Craig Zobel. The script for the film, about rich people who hunt poor people for sport, leaked, and Trump supporters missed its subtext, calling it an invitation for blue state liberals to come after conservatives with guns. The problems with this are too numerous to explain in the preface to a film review, but suffice it to say, Universal made a bad call. By keeping the film from the public, they've left it to our imagination exactly how anti-Trump the film is or isn't. What they've also done is set a dangerous precedent. If Republicans decide a movie is unfair, and a goodly sum of major studio product is politically to the left by default these days, all the president need do is tweet about it, and that film will be shelved. We can all be grateful then that no one had a hard look at Ready or Not, a film implicitly as radical as The Hunt. Which is to say, neither film is going to change the way anyone votes, but they both posit a game in which the rich hunt the poor. Ready or Not doesn't wear its anti-capitalist bias proudly, but you'd have to be blind to miss it. Grace, Samara Weaving, loves Alex Ladomas, Mark O'Brien, so much that she's tolerated the hoops through which his family have made her jump. Alcoholic wastrel Daniel, Adam Brody, hitting on her, mother Becky, Andy McDowell, being somewhat cagey about her approval, sister Emily, Melanie Scrofano, not even showing up in time for the ceremony, Father Tony, Henry Turney, out-voicing his displeasure at the girl's status, and Aunt Helene, Nikki Gagné, staring daggers at her from the moment they met. They're a bizarre bunch, but Grace sees the light at the end of the tunnel now that they've all congregated at the Ladomas Manor for the nuptials. With the ceremony out of the way, Grace starts to relax, But then Aunt Helene shows up unannounced in Alex's bedroom to remind him that there's one more ritual before the two can live happily ever after. Alex neglected to mention that every time someone enters the Ladomos dominion, they have to play a game. The Ladomos family name is in the world of the film meant to be as ubiquitous as Parker Brothers or Milton Bradley. They're world-renowned for their board and card games, so Grace takes the little moonlit challenge as a quirk because of their chosen industry. However, when Tony explains the origin of the family fortune, how it was only after great-grandfather Ladomas had chance encounter with a traveler that he made his millions, and Grace pulls hide-and-seek. From the box of games, the entire family has a collective intake of breath, and it's clear something is off. Grace hides in a dumbwaiter for as long as she cares to, missing the sight of the entire Ladomos family arming themselves to the teeth before they begin to look for her. It's only when Emily accidentally kills one of the family's 3 maids that Grace fully understands that this isn't just a game. It can be easy to overstate the case of a movie like Ready or Not. It's replete with badass images of Grace in her wedding dress, wearing post-Kill Bill swagger heading to do battle with the baddie Ladomas progeny, covered in blood, sporting a bandolier, a half-baked quip, and a ripped wedding dress. It's filled with easy jokes about the insanity of the rich and the callousness with which they take to their task of hunting and killing a woman on the grounds of their mansion. It's got cavalier work from Brody, McDowell, who struggles a little with the tone, and Christian Brune as Amelie's jackass husband. But they should all be funnier, and they should all have been given a little more to chew. Cherney and Weaving are the only ones who fully seize every second of their screen time, showcasing the full-bodied comedy and crazy-eyed horror this might have been. At its heart, this film cries out to be the most dangerous game by way of Schitt's Creek, but it doesn't appear to know what it takes to be a satire. It knows the sight of rich people with medieval weaponry hunting a woman means something, but they haven't worked out the details. "The ammunition's just for show," says a butler to Weaving as she points a gun at him midway through the carnage. The same is true of the film's political machinery. Ready or Not quite plainly didn't ask to be the other movie about human beings hunting each other for sport. But as Wesley Morris once wrote, a moment picks a movie more than the reverse. It's quite plainly in Weaving's corner, but it doesn't have much to offer her. Even the final line has a kind of cheap seats Joe Esterhaas anti-poetry that has nothing to do with the conflict and is more about scoring a laugh as the audience heads to the parking lot. On a technical level, the digital photography is too murky to become the fake Lars von Trier movie that directors Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette, who also go by the name Radio Silence, appear to be aiming for. McDowell, in particular, is betrayed by the harsh light and muddled photography. She's one of the most radiant women in the American cinema and is treated to harsh lighting and garish post-production colorization, to say nothing of an unflattering hairstyle. A little confidence in and respect for a game cast would have gone a long way. However, and it's a big however, the film is charismatic and thrilling enough to bypass its shortcomings. Weaving makes for a very likable hero, with a broad comedic appeal, and every girl clumsiness and sarcastic rejoinder for everything. In a better world, she'd be headlining comedies already. She makes for a likable action hero precisely because she knows and shows that the clothes don't fit her. In her tattered wedding dress, she fights for her life against everyone from her young nephews to the butler. Every wound she receives shows her that the backwards morality by which the rich live is so deeply ingrained that no amount of pleading could right the course. It's also her first clue that not even her beloved Alex will be able to get her out of this jam. She's not just fighting people, she's fighting tradition and the idea of family. Weaving's expressiveness lends her plight instant pathos, and Brody, who's been one of America's best character actors for over a decade, slowly pulling back from the rest of the clan, plays nicely against the bug-eyed fervor of the rest of the Ladomas' brood. By the time the games come to an end, Ready or Not has ceased to be about the rich and the poor. It's about a girl trying to survive a violent ordeal, which is potent enough for the moment you're watching the film, But in a climate in which politics can pull a film from a release schedule, now is not the time to hide. Since the release of their feature debut, Devil's Due, in 2014, Matt Bettinelli-Olpin, Tyler Gillett, Guy Bizek, and R. Christopher Murphy, collectively known as Radio Silence, have earned themselves a name as smart, knowing, and skilled genre filmmakers. They followed up their debut with the 2015 anthology horror Southbound, and more recently they wrote and directed the fifth installment of the Scream franchise, actually titled simply Scream, but also known as Scream 5 and, somewhat jokingly, 5 Cream this year. Before they turned their attention to Sidney Prescott, Woodsboro, and Ghostface, however, the foursome wrote and directed the comedy/horror Ready or Not, 2019, arguably the film that put them on the mainstream radar. 2019 was a strange year for cinema. The last normal theatrical year pre-COVID, it was also the year Hollywood seemed to finally catch on to the growing unrest within the general populace over disproportionate inequality and wealth between the haves and the have-nots. Alongside Ready or Not, we also got the release of Rian Johnson's excellent murder mystery, Knives Out, and the South Korean comedy thriller Parasite became the first foreign-language film to win Best Picture at the Oscars. All three films tackle classism and inequality in some way, and absolutely none of them come out in favor of the wealthy elites. It is Ready or Not, however, that perhaps best displays the anger and resentment toward these upper-class toffs. And let me tell you folks, as a movie, it has a hell of a lot of fun taking them down. As Samara Weaving's Grace so pitch-perfectly puts it, fucking rich people. I first saw Ready or Not when it was released in cinemas, and so I feel like it's worth me noting that I was already fairly familiar with it before rewatching it recently and then writing this review. Having already seen it a couple of times, I knew I liked it. This time, of course, I was going in with a more critical eye, and so I was prepared to find things to poke holes in and dislike. Ultimately, that didn't really wind up happening. This movie is an absolute blast from start to finish. For me, it's pretty much firing on all of its silly and absurdist cylinders. A brilliantly satirical, gory, and original little movie that knows exactly what it wants to be and is pretty damn happy to be just that. The film tells the story of Grace, a former foster child played by the immensely watchable and ever-brilliant Samara Weaving, who takes on the role having more than earned her horror stripes with the excellent 1-2 punch of 2017's Mayhem and the Babysitter, who is about to marry into the wealthy Le Domas family, who made their fortune through the Le Domas Games Company. As it transpires, however, the already peculiar clan has a rather lethal wedding tradition. As part of an ancient deal with the mysterious Le Bail, in order to build and maintain their fortune, each new member of the family must draw a card from Le Bail's puzzle box and play the game written upon the card. Unfortunately for Grace, she draws the hide-and-seek card, which means that while she must hide, the Le Domases will hunt her down and attempt to murder her before dawn, or else they themselves will suffer a terrible fate. Now, if that all sounds totally bonkers, that's because it is. But fear not. Ready or Not is well aware of how absurd its premise is, and opts to, rather than even attempt to maintain a sense of seriousness, simply lean into said absurdity and have as much fun as it can while doing it. And it really is a lot of fun. The film revels in the cat-and-mouse tension of its premise and leaps on every opportunity to take potshots at its out-of-touch villains. What struck me when I first saw it in the cinema, and what continues to strike me upon rewatch now, is just how angry the film can be. It relishes dispatching of the wealthy Le Domas clan and has absolutely no qualms with killing them off in brutal and increasingly violent ways. In a sense, there is an air of John Carpenter's 1988 satirical action horror They Live to Ready or Not. Like Carpenter before them, Radio Silence don't even try to imbue their antagonists with an understandable or sympathetic motive, and instead, they present them as a group of narcissistic, dislikable assholes from the off. The Le Domas family are villains through and through, even before we get to the whole murdering people on their wedding night thing. For what it's worth, I actually really admire this aspect of the film. It's oddly refreshing in this day and age to not have some kind of sympathetic motive attached to the bad guys. Here the reason is pure and simple. It's all about wealth. You wouldn't get many points for delivering a Marxist reading of the film, since any subtext in that regard here is pretty much outright text. The Ladomas family, and their total lack of empathy or care, certainly makes the film a whole lot more enjoyable. And even family matriarch Becky, played brilliantly by Andie MacDowell, who basically spends the movie reminding us all just why she was such a big name back in the day, who at first seems like she could well be the one to share some common ground with our heroine, is ultimately revealed to be just another massive piece of shit. This is Weaving's film, though. Much like she did in McGee's batshit horror/comedy The Babysitter from 2017, she steals the film from under everyone else by merely existing. She has such a charismatic and watchable screen presence that she doesn't need to do an awful lot to get the audience on side to begin with. That's not to downplay her performance, mind, as she portrays the nervous awkwardness of meeting her soon-to-be in-laws brilliantly during the beginning and highlights the gap in social standing between them expertly. But she really gets to show off her acting chops once the film shifts gears, and we enter into the more murderous and violent second and third acts, where she starts to unravel in the ridiculousness and terror of her situation. Much like the Terminator's Sarah Connor before her, Weaving presents Grace at first as a hapless victim, before embracing her survival instincts and quickly becoming a Rambo-esque final girl, ready to take on her would-be killers and show them who is really in charge here. It's during this section of the film that we have the most fun. Radio silence play around with our expectations to a certain degree, who's with Grace, who isn't, etc. But for the most part, the film just doubles down on its high-concept setup and runs with it. We get intense set-piece after intense set-piece, each one more bum-clenchingly exciting than the last, as the movie barrels toward a conclusion that I don't really want to go into here, because to spoil it would be to spoil perhaps the best joke of the entire film. As the Ladomas hunt Grace down through their suitably gothic mansion, the tension ratchets up and the humor builds in equal measure. This is a movie that's as content-poking fun at itself as it is delivering on gory and grisly violence, tense and suspenseful set pieces, and some great one-liners. Late in the film, a police officer asks a blood-soaked, muddy, bruised, beaten, and exhausted Grace what happened, to which she casually replies, "In-laws." There's so much here to enjoy that despite its overt thematic concerns and obvious disdain for the dreaded 1%, even if you're not interested in a movie with a message, I think you'd find it hard not to get caught up in the fun. The movie kind of snowballs, and with each passing event, the stakes and scale escalate more and more until we finally get to the final act, where everything has gotten so deliciously out of hand that it barely resembles the taut, low-key chase narrative it first appeared to be. That's not to say everything works. Some of the side characters are left feeling a little flat, not given the time or focus to really stand out from the crowd, and as a result, a lot of the Ladomas clan ultimately feel kind of interchangeable. Having said that, as I already pointed out, the film doesn't seem all that interested in exploring them as characters anyway, and the focus is very much on Weaving, who more than succeeds in shouldering the bulk of the film herself. Grace should really go down as one of the great final girls. Honestly, she's brilliant. I think maybe I'm in love. Ready or Not sat proudly near the top of my favorite films of 2019, and I am very pleased to say that that hasn't changed. This is an excellent and fun movie that is well worth your time. It's got a brilliantly satirical edge, some fantastic direction, beautiful set design, wonderfully dislikable villains, solid performances, and a lead character that deserves to sit alongside all the great and iconic final girls. I really, really enjoyed it, even now on my third watch, and that has got to count for something. It delivers on its premise and then some, never allowing itself to get bogged down in its obvious messaging, and always remembering to be fun and entertaining above all else. It's a gory, tense, funny, silly little horror that's as gloriously engaging as it is delightfully gruesome. I can't recommend it enough. More like this, please. Distributed by Fox Searchlight Pictures. Release dates July 27, 2019 in Fantasia, August 21, 2019 in United States. Running time 95 minutes. Country United States. Language English. Budget $6 million. box office 57.6 million. So guys, this is their view of Ready or Not movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.